Background?
Action. Actually, I like doing ensemble movies because you create mini stories within the story that build up the emotion in the movie. I see it like a very new Western. I've never seen a Western of this sort because you have all these characters. We have 85 speaking parts. And every actor has built his own character.
The screenplay suggested that this was the real Wyatt Earp, so I did really want to play the real Wyatt Earp. So I did read a lot of stories that have been passed down through the family. I've had access to through Wyatt Earp III, who is working on this show.
Everyone agreed to do this because they wanted to recreate the history the closest way they possibly could to how it actually happened. I think Kurt Russell is probably going to go down in history as playing the best Wyatt Earp ever played because it shows the human side of him.
The Westerns that I've seen in the past, Wyatt Earp is basically just a lawman, a real straight line lawman. Didn't really ever explore the realities of the other sides of his character, a very dark side. A man who was not above cheating in a card game, not above cheating on his wife.
He is a human being. He has flaws. He has faults. He doesn't come in and say Wyatt Earp hero. He's Wyatt Earp human being.
To me, he's an interesting guy because he's 360 degrees. He did good things, bad things, and all the things in between.
It's not like suddenly the Earps have come here to tame this town. They come here to get rich, just like we do. And every other boomer comes to a boom town. You come to do business and to make money.
We're off and running. Just acquired us a quarter interest in the game at the Oriental.
Acquired.
So to speak.
If we're successful at what we're trying to do in demythifying these people, we will have achieved something that hasn't been done before in dealing with Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. And that's a real interesting relationship. I mean, that's a very, it's a bizarre relationship.
Doc had helped him find a man he was looking for in Texas as a marshal, and they became friends from that. Odd pair, though, because Wyatt Earp was a straight lawman and Doc was being a gambler was a fine profession, and you could stand for your honor by killing someone if they called you a cheater, which people did to Doc, and he killed them.
Now we can be friends again.
Also, he just, killed people that he didn't like.
I just think that Doc was always there for Wyatt. They understood each other, they were fair with each other. They didn't step across each other's boundaries ever. And interestingly enough, in all the Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday relationship movies that have been done, and there's been like some 50 of them over the years, they've always had a confrontational aspect to them. And we don't. Ours is not without its slight weirdness between the two, but it's not confrontational.
And every version of the story of Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp that I've seen, they end up removing the real story to dramatize the dynamics of these characters, and they usually put them against each other, which is odd because the actual story is so fascinating that it works rather well that they are legitimate friends.
Val has, I think, gone into the heart of the real Doc Holliday, which I've never seen it on film. I've never even seen anybody attempt the Southern accent, let alone his refined Southern quality mixed with his refined Southern psychotic look at life that is very different from anything else.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
He was the son of a highly cultured Southern aristocrat, born in 1851 on the banks of the Chattahoochee. And his father became the mayor of Valdosta, Georgia. He fell in love with his first cousin who joined a nunnery. That threw him up north after the Civil War, where he studied dentistry. And then he discovered he had tuberculosis and gave himself over to his passions, which were drinking and killing and gambling.
Doc Holliday was a stone-cold, gut-you-in-a-minute killer. He's a man that has a death sentence already, so he lives every day as though it was his last, and he has no fear.
It's fun to kill bad men. I enjoyed that.
I walk around this town and look these people in the eye. It's just like someone slapping me in the face. These people are afraid to walk down the street, and I'm trying to make money off that like some goddamn vulture. Virgil represents the law the law for any era, you know, who's obstinate, strong, tough, has principles.
The way I'm playing Virgil, he's the law man. I mean, he's not wearing a badge when he comes in here, but right after he gets here, he's looking to pick it up. And it's just a matter of time.
Virgil really has this great kind of this mask of civil duty and righteousness. But I really think that under it all, he just wants to kick some ass.
Damn you, Pam! Don't you threaten me, you little son of a bitch!
All right. Come on, easy, Bert, easy.
My character, Morgan Earp, he's the kid brother. He's kind of a bit of a romantic. He's into spiritualism. He's also kind of the young guy who's got these two older brothers who he just totally lionizes and just adores. And he kind of wants to live up to them.
Morgan and Wyatt were extremely close, and Morgan was just a nice guy. Everybody liked him. And he certainly looked up to Wyatt.
Remember what I said about seeing a light when you're dying? Yeah. It ain't true. I can't see a damn thing.
I think it was a man's world. That's what I think. I really believe that it was a time for men to express themselves with their guns and their horses and the drinking and all that stuff. And I think that women were strong. You had to be to survive, but you were definitely in the secondary position.
What kind of town is this?
Nice scenery.
Josephine Sarah Marcus was a wealthy girl from San Francisco, from a Jewish family, who pretty much ran away from home to join this theatrical troupe. I think she had romantic visions of the West and finding a real Western hero type. She was kind of a high-spirited woman.
I want to move and go places and never look back. Just have fun forever. That's my idea of heaven. Need someone to share it with, though.
I mean, she was crazy about Wyatt, and because he was that image of the strong, silent type who really took care of things.
It really shows all these characters as fully rounded, fully developed people, which is what they were. Curly Bill and Johnny Ringo, for being bad guys, were charismatic, fun-loving, great guys who'd shoot you in the back. But, you know, it's an afterthought.
It seems to me in the last decade, at least, movies have become so formulaic. You have your hero's sidekick, his girlfriend, and the villain. And the only question is, how big is the gun going to be? Who kills the villain? And the villain has no past life, no future life, no nothing. And so I was extremely pleased to read this script and find that, you know, my character has a whole life and a humanity, and Ringo's and Ike's and the McClurys, they're all people. They're human beings. And it's not like Hollywood heroes and Hollywood villains.
You know, it's very important that your enemy or the nemesis in the movie should be as strong as your leading actors. To climb a hill is easy. To climb a mountain is difficult, you know, and that's how the nemesis should be.
Curly Bill was a guy that, I mean, basically everybody liked him. He had a lot of dash about him, a lot of panache, and he would go into bars and buy drinks for the whole place.
Drinks are on me!
Drinks are on me, boys. We're living today. And this guy has a tremendous sense of humor, and he really just lusts for life. You know, he just eats it up. I mean, he's certainly got his mean streak and his killer streak, but there's a sympathetic quality to him as well.
I tell you, boys, even I'm worried what's going to happen once Ringo runs this outfit. God have mercy.
Michael Biehn has been exactly Byronic as Johnny Ringo.
Well, this, I think, is the best role that I've had in a long time. It's written beautifully, and the character is very dark, very complex.
You smell that, Bill? Smells like someone died.
By this time, Johnny was about 35 or 36 and could kind of see the law coming. His type of gunfight, it was beginning to be a thing of the past. I think he realized it and drank a lot. He's got a lot of problems that stem from his religion growing up in a really hardcore religious family, and he's really a tragic figure as far as I'm concerned.
Look, darling, Johnny Ringo, the deadliest pistolier since Wild Bill, they say.
The way the script is written, there's a lot of people talking about Ringo, how crazy he is. And as an actor, if I have the rest of the cast telling the audience how dangerous I am, then I don't have to walk around with a chip on my shoulder. You know, the worst thing to do when you're playing a bad guy is to play a bad guy. You're playing who you are, and your actions kind of speak for themselves, and people can decide whether those are bad actions or not bad actions.
You're gonna bleed. You got a fight coming today.
I've never seen Ike Clanton portrayed as fully as Stephen Lang is portraying him, with tremendous highs and lows and humor and sadness and cruelty, all different sides.
I think Ike has come down through myth as a dirty coward, you know, and through all the testimony I've read in this huge inquest that they did on the OK Corral, there's not a man who's either for or against Ike who ever calls him a coward. One of the interesting things about the way he's written, he talks in we an awful lot of the time. I think that the brotherhood of the cowboys is something that he really, really cherishes. In some way, it's sort of a replacement for this sort of fractured family that he has. That's what I want to bring to the role and try and, you know, correct all these darn fool notions about Ike Clanton.
It's an extremely unusual experience. It's one that you talk about, like I come from the theater. It's one we used to talk about in the theater, that you really wanted an ensemble feeling and all those things that rarely, if ever, achieved. And I think we're getting it here.
I probably had more fun on this show than any other that I've done. You walk out of your hotel room, and you walk on the set, and there's Kurt Russell, and there's Val Kilmer, and there's Powers Booth, and it's just such a fine cast. It's really a pleasure to be able to work with so many other good actors.
And I just found myself watching this confrontation between Michael Biehn and Val. I just wanted to say, well, good for you, because I felt the choices that were sort of being made on a kind of, from microsecond to microsecond, were so sophisticated and so dead on, you know, that it was really it was a pleasure to be there. Then you turn around and it's your line. And you go, oh, yeah. Sorry, fellas, I was watching y'all.
I think that we're all just sort of enjoying each other because it is such a great cast and everybody does their homework and knows who their character is, and then we just sort of get to play.
I think that the chemistry of all the people involved has been the right kind. Nobody's shied away from any part of their character's flaws, or nobody's shied away from any of the emotions that I think people felt at that time.
I've never seen a movie with so much detail about reality. We shot it where it happened, or around where it happened, a few miles away. The costumes are all authentic. The extras are all authentic. It's totally driven by authenticity and historical detail.
We couldn't be doing this story on a back lot in town. You know, I mean, you got to get out here and do it. It's the outdoors. It's a chance to see big skies and wide open spaces, peopled by guys in period costumes and men on horseback.
I love doing movies on location because you get the real places, and you can photograph real places that look much better than a set in a studio. Tombstone was a large town, about 4 or 5 cross streets, you know. And we used 2 locations to enlarge the town, in Old Tucson and here, in Mescal.
The town is laid out very, very similarly to what the town was then, and it does take a lot of time and effort and money to do that. But I'm hoping that that attention is what will pay off for us as far as an audience is concerned, that they'll be entertained by the illusion and the feeling of being there in that time in a place that doesn't exist anymore.
I took the script and did a breakdown on all the sets, and I went and visited the real Tombstone and looked at like tons of research from the archives, the Arizona Historical Society, and all over, and then came out to this town, which we were going to convert into Tombstone, and try to figure out how to overlay the matrix of the two and turn them into the same thing for the least amount of money and the most dazzle.
What's been done here is something that hasn't been done before. Tombstone has been recreated the way Tombstone was. It was brightly painted. It was dynamic. I mean, the opium den on Main Street, the saloons, everything, all of this stuff was going 90 miles an hour, 24 hours a day.
We worked for, a couple of months with my crew, like constructing, building, researching, drafting, designing everything, looking for antiques. We made everything in this room from scratch. We built the building from the ground up and built the bar, and all the molding and everything we made in the shop. A lot of the wallpaper is reproductions of historic wallpaper, and the light fixtures are like authentic old light fixtures that we recreated just for this from a photograph.
I tried to put things in the movie that you've never seen in westerns before. Things like even the horse manure in the streets. I had somebody picking it up in the middle of the scene. Because that's what happened to that, you know, little details to give it a look, to give it something different.
That's why we made the town really colorful and very elegant. We wanted to give that feeling of kind of vitality and exuberance to the town.
We've got incredible costumes. The detail is amazing. And I think, to me, it's just the elements. We're out in the heat, the flies, the smells, you know, having horses around all the time. It's quite easy, actually, to fit into this world.
If you look at clothes left from that period, or if you look at wallpaper samples and paint samples and books, people had very wild sense of color. I mean, they'd use all this like lime green and purples and some kind of very jarring color schemes for us. And this director really wanted to see that, because a lot of westerns, they do go for that sepia tone, brown, amber, gold.
Again, Hollywood is kind of lost. They were looking at these old pictures and seeing them in sepia tone, and they always thought, oh, these old guys always dressed in browns and grays and tans, but they didn't. They wore red silk shirts, and most of the bandanas that they wore were silk.
People were proud of their money. They wore big diamonds on their tie pins. And they had a pronounced sense of style. You knew who someone was by how they dressed in a vivid way. They were vivid characters.
The outside of a character helps you define the inside. The kind of watch he wears, how he stands. Does he button his vest? Does he wear gloves when he's riding?
Put on the costume, and that's when it all begins. And that's when it all changes. You see Val walking in and out of here with a straw hat and a pair of Bermuda shorts and a pair of thongs on at night. When he comes out of that trailer with that pallor and he's sweating and he's got all those clothes on and packing those guns, it's a different man.
I think every actor in the show has got their mustache or their beard, which a lot of people wore back then. And the wardrobe is really pretty exciting and different than a lot of westerns. I think it kind of sticks with us when we're off the set too.
You know, I know this shirt is an absolute copy of the real deal from that period, and so are the hats. And this movie is going to look different than any western anybody's ever seen, and I think it's probably going to look closer to what it really was than any western that's ever been on the screen.
On this movie, we've got original saddles from the 1870s and 1880s. Same thing with the guns. The characters are carrying the actual guns that the real characters carried.
This is the buntline special that Kurt Russell carries, Wyatt Earp. We researched it. It has a 10-inch barrel, 45 Colt caliber, and this is the gun he carried in Tombstone, the OK Corral. This single-action Colt here with is nickel-plated with ivory grips, and this is the gun that Michael Bean carries in it as Johnny Ringo, and Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. They both use the same type of guns. They both like the nickel and the ivory.
Other movies, you'll see them with these low-slung holsters and tied down and all of this. That never happened in the Old West. Every holster, every gun belt in this movie is authentic to the period.
I happen to believe if you make it right for the people that know the difference, and then the other people are going to get a lot more out of it at the same time.
They hired a lot of reenactors as costume extras for this movie. Basically, a buckaroo is a living cowboy historian. They're much better than hiring just the regular extras off the street, because these guys come equipped with their costumes, their horses, their period saddles, and their guns. They know how to ride horses. They know how to handle the guns safely. It alleviates a lot of headaches for the production company, and they look good. I called one guy from Montana, and he was all excited. He says, I want to come down and work on Tombstone. I love the whole concept of the film. And I said, well, you know, you're going to have to live in a tent. And he said, live in a tent? I was just bringing my bedroll down.
The buckaroos are out there 50 strong, living in tents, and when we're shooting nights, they're sleeping during the day in those tents. It's 115 degrees. They're part of what's going on. They bring all of that to the set. It really does make a difference.
You know, you just sit around and you glance off, and there won't be any cameras, and there won't be any lights, and there won't be any crew people, and you just see a couple of the extras and an actor or two lounging up against one of these buildings. You know, you see the mountains in the background and no telephone poles, and it really takes you back.
I think it's always fun when you get an opportunity as an actor to be somebody, but it's even greater fun when you have the opportunity to go someplace and really exist in that place, and in our instance, time frame as well.
Historically, it is the most glorified of all gunfights. I mean, it is the historic Old West
gun battle.
It was a fast and important gunfight. And that gunfight really began to quench the bad guys out of the West. That's why it's so important.
It was illegal to carry guns in town. Virgil was enforcing a law that he had, posted. And he wasn't going down there to kill people, he was going down there to take their guns away from them.
There's a lot of different accounts in terms of the motivations and the characters. There's accounts that said the Earps really did go down there to disarm these guys. Some people believe that they had a chance to teach these cowboys a lesson, and they knew that some of them were unarmed, and they went down there and they bullied them into a gunfight.
Most people are brought up to think Wyatt Earp is a hero and his brothers were heroes, and they were the heroes of the shootout at OK Corral. Well, that's not exactly the way it went down.
You don't have to worry about a thing. I just went over there and disarmed.
It is factual that Sheriff Bien said, you don't have to go down there to the OK Corral, I've disarmed them. Well, if they were going down there to disarm them, and he said that, why did they continue?
They said thanks and kept on going to the OK Corral, which sort of tells me that they had plans other than disarming them.
There was a lot of hatred on both sides that led up to this event. And they wanted to run us out of town. They threatened us, and a lot of people would have left town. These guys didn't leave town. They said, the hell with that. We're not going to leave town. And so they confronted these guys at the OK Corral.
The Earps and Doc Holliday came down there with shotguns, and their 6 guns were loaded to the hilt. And they were looking for a fight, and they picked on 4 of our guys. 2 of them had weapons, and the other 2 didn't. So it was really an unfair fight from the beginning.
It got out of hand. It got out of hand very quickly. And in 28 seconds, the gun battle was over.
Oh, my God.
You have those little moments of special magic and stuff that every once in a while in a movie occurred. I remember the first time we did it, that was going to be a full whole master shot where we came around the corner, talked to John Behan, came around and met up with the 4 cowboys all the way into the OK Corral and actually started the fight, went through the fight, finished it, and left. Just as George said action, there was a long, heavy crack of thunder as he was panning down off of the sign of the OK Corral to see the 4 guys coming around the corner. We were charged up. We all thought that was we felt like, if you can't be there doing it, you could at least come close with recreating it.
They would look like preachers, but they could also be undertakers. The black coats, the hats, they're coming up, the wind is blowing their coats, and they appear with the long lenses up the hill. It's a very strong image.
What I like very much is that it's shot in real time, pretty much, and that it's the only accurate attempt that I've seen. I think it's some 40, 50 rounds were fired inside of 30, 40 seconds.
All we had to do is shoot it the right way, shoot it how it happened. It happened very in close proximity. They were out riding or hiding behind burning wagons like the usual Westerns. It happened very fast.
There's a moment between Kurt and I where Kurt's like surveying and then he locks in on me. I mean, it says in the script that my eyes go dead and I pull my pistol.
Billy Clanton and Wyatt Earp were the first 2 to draw almost simultaneously. Billy shot first and missed. And interestingly, Wyatt didn't shoot back at Billy Clanton. He shot at Frank McClowry and hit him in the stomach. And that gave Morgan time to shoot at Billy Clanton and hit him. And I think basically in that first split second, it's probably when that battle was pretty much decided.
The first thing I see is my brother, Billy Clanton, being shot, and Frank McClowry go down. I see 4 undertakers dressed in black with guns blazing, and I know I don't have a gun. And I walk right into it and try and stop it. And Wyatt won't have it, throws me aside.
Fight commenced! Get the fight or get away!
I actually get shot 6 times. And the first bullet shattered his wrist. And he got shot in the stomach and he went down and he managed to shift over to his left hand and he continued firing. And actually he shot Virgil in the calf and he shot Morgan Earp in the shoulder.
Everybody in the OK Corral basically moved and tried to get to a different position to either not be hit or to hit the other guy. Except for Wyatt Earp. He literally stood on one spot. The guys who lived in that time who knew Wyatt Earp, they all said the same thing, that he was uncommonly cool under fire. He didn't have a sense of panic about him. He just didn't have that. We had worked long and hard on it, And then we spent 3 days covering it, you know, getting all the different pieces. It was a great 3 days, and the editor thinks that it's the best action sequence he's ever edited, so I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping it looks as good as it felt.
The OK Corral is the pivotal confrontation in the movie. And it pays off everything that happens in the first act, and it sets up everything that happens in the second act. I mean, because of the OK Corral, there are then acts of vengeance on both sides for the rest of the movie.
Unfortunately, it was like throwing a rock at a hornet's nest, because there were a lot of these guys, these cowboys, and they had their own brotherhood, and they had their own loyalties, and they wanted revenge.
I want your blood, and I want your souls, and I want them both right now.
Morgan was killed, and Virgil was maimed, and after that, Wyatt sort of went on a rampage and split up the Cowboys, then drove the Cowboys basically out of the Arizona Territory.
Most of the movies that dealt with Wyatt Earp in the past have used the OK Corral as the ending shot, the big shot. Big difference in our movie is we use it as a catapult to go into what happened after that incident. And then what happens afterwards was even more bloody and brutal than the actual fight at the OK Corral.
The headlines in the paper the next day after the shootout at OK Corral said murders at OK Corral, and there was a big inquest, and half the town, you know, believed in what they did, and the other half of town didn't believe in what they did. And there were a lot of people around that really thought the Earps weren't any better than the Cowboys.
The OK Corral was a turning point in American history. If the Cowboys had won that fight, if the Earps had been killed there, if Wyatt Earp had shot at Ike Clanton, who was unarmed, I think the Earps would have gone to jail or been hanged. And the Clantons would have come out, you know, history would have painted them the heroes.
Strange, there's not a lot of difference between the law and the way the Earps did it and the way the Cowboys did it, except that they had badges and we didn't. So, what is the law? Does the badge make you the law? That's one of the big questions of the movie.
Well, I guess we did our good deed for today, Mayor.